Hi, my name is Michael Boyajian, and I'm going to do a quick book talk here as we approach the New Year's Eve and New Year 2024. Hopefully, it'll be a nicer year than this year. When we came out of the COVID tunnel, to use a phrase that President Obama once used, we should have all sat down and had a beer together. But instead, chaos broke out. I won't go into details. But anyhow, my wife and I, my late wife, Jeri, and I own this home in the historic village of Fishkill. And it's an historically designated village, and so is our house, as are many of the houses in the village. And by the National Trust. But in any event, and the house is 182 years old, okay? 1841 it dates back to. And starting in a few weeks, the village is going to be celebrating its 140th anniversary of it being founded, even though it was here long before that. It goes back before the American Revolution to the early 1700s. But in any event, about 10 years ago, my wife and I we did a lot of research on the house. So just a lot of historical stuff here. It was an apothecary's house, so we found a lot of antique bottles here and a lot of other historics, marbles. When you're digging up in the garden, you'll find a historic marble from the old 1800s or something. But in any event, we got to thinking about the Underground Railroad and started poking around with that idea for a while, and we had a couple of places that fit the profile of hiding places for the railroad, but you had to do a lot of research, and hence this book. Now, we picked it up and put it down many times over 10 years. Then Jeri got sick, Jeri recovered, Jeri passed away, and it got put down, picked up, and then put down for a couple of years after she passed away. What got us really moving before she got sick was the FDR Library had the National Park Service's division on the Underground Railroad. The director come and speak, and got a brochure and some other stuff from them, and really that really got we really got us to hit the gas. And it's very difficult to prove. Okay, why? Because to historically identify, I should say, as compared to any other historical thing, because the Underground Railroad was so secretive, okay, and it was secretive because it was illegal under federal law, per the Supreme Court's notorious, infamous Dred Scott decision, which said, once a slave, always a slave. Once property, always property. You can go to a free state, you're still a slave in the eyes of the court. And many southern states had the same laws. And in any event, it wasn't, they didn't have big signs outside like, motel vacancy with neon and everything like that, okay? It was very secretive. And the only way to find it, having talked to many authors and experts in the field, is you have to find a connection with Quakers and an active African American community, because they often were marshaling people out of the South. I mean, tens of thousands of people escaped slavery on the Underground Railroad, and one of the main routes was through the Hudson Valley up to Albany, where they either went west to Buffalo and into Canada, and then or proceeded north to Lake Champlain and rode a boat up to Canada. Why Canada? Why not just stay in the north? Because in the north you were subject to the laws of the federal government, and they were considered property still. But in Canada, they had no jurisdiction, and Canada did not was against slavery. It was illegal. And in any event, and they if a fugitive slave hunter came up there and tried to grab somebody, they be grabbed. And of course, you had figures like Sojourner Truth, who's getting great popularity now. Harriet Tubman, there was a great movie about her, how she got a lot of people out. And 12 Years a Slave, the movie, where a free man was grabbed because he was African American and taken back and became a slave for 12 years until he got out. And then, of course, there's Frederick Douglass, who he wrote the first book. There were a lot of books written after that, but he wrote the first book ever in the history of humankind from the slave's perspective. You know, that was the first time it was written, and you could get killed if someone who taught you to how to read would get killed if they did that. But he was smart. He paid his friends, the little kids in the neighborhood, the white kids, to teach him how to read. You know, and he was able to learn to read and became one of the smartest men on the planet. And what he was to Lincoln, as Martin Luther King Jr. was to President Lyndon Johnson, a guiding light. A very bright guiding light, okay? And in any event, so that's why it's secretive. And finally, I started having a problem because the hate crime laws in this country, at the state level and the federal level, there's always a hesitation to, just to squeeze the trigger and make the charge. It's got to be investigated. But why is that? It's been on the books for a very long time now, since the mid-90s. And why is there a hesitation to, implement the arrest for hate crime? Leave it to the judge and jury to decide if it's a valid charge. I don't like this hesitation. I'm not blaming the police or the prosecutors. It's just this hesitation. Just do it. I mean, it's obvious if someone walks to some place wearing swastikas and starts shooting. I think you get the idea that it is a hate crime. You don't really need to go into this Facebook page and this and that. Okay. But in any event, that was really getting under my nerves. And of course, I read the book 1619, which was published by the New York Times. And if you have any doubts to the brutality of the slavery, read the book. Read the book and the treatment of African Americans in this country since 1619, okay? And there's something to what Toni Morrison says in before she begins her book Beloved, and it's 60 million or more, which is a statement of the losses through slavery to the African American community or Africans in general, but. Anyhow, I'm getting very annoyed now with these politicians out there. And again, I used to be a Republican back in the day, and I'm a Democrat now. I started out as a Democrat, but my county chairman in Brooklyn was an African American, Arthur Bromwell, and in fact, he appointed me a judge or put my name forward as to become a judge, and I became a human rights judge, and then the labor judge for New York State, and then an unemployment judge too. But anyhow, moving on to other things is, and I use these quotes from my relationship with high-level African Americans, Republican, Democrat, whatever they may be. I pepper it through the book. Fantastic stories that were told to me, or I took part in, peppered throughout the book. And why did I write the book? Okay, yes, my wife and I were historically oriented and proud of the house. And oddly enough, Jeri's family had 4 members in the American Revolution, one direct. And it so happened that one direct person, the father, the 3 sons were indirect. The father, who was direct, we found out many years later, served here in Fishkill, years after we moved here. But anyhow, so that was basically one of the reasons for doing the Underground Railroad about this house, because we really suspected that there was something there, having lived in Brooklyn Heights, which was one of the way stations, and the famous abolitionist preacher Ward Beecher Stowe, his congregation was there, and it still exists today in Brooklyn Heights, and it's packed every Sunday. It's we have that orientation, and we've been to Nathaniel Hawthorne's House of the Seven Gables, and again, inside the house there, behind the kitchen, behind this fireplace, is a staircase up to a secret Underground Railroad room. So we had an idea what to be looking for. And again, the attic is hidden in the back of a closet. Behind the fireplace in the basement is an alcove, a brick alcove. There's no explanation for why they would have it there, other than it being Underground Railroad hiding places or, way stations. So, yes, the evidence was there. I took several, pokes at it with the research and came up, no Quakers and, but there was an African-American community. And more, as I picked it up, put it down, picked it up, put it down, little bits came back in. And I did find the Quakers in the chain of the deed, starting before the house was even built, when it was just property in the chain of the deed. A Quaker woman named Hull, last name, married into the Van Wyck family, and she was a Quaker. So that was the first one. And there's other things. I don't want to go into the research. You can read it in the book. But the book, it was like Jiffy Pop popcorn, okay? It expanded beyond this house being part of the Underground Railroad. And getting back to the hate crimes, there's a hesitation to officially designate homes as Underground Railroad stations, which is ridiculous. The amount of homes that they allowed to be designated, there would be lines wrapped around the place. There were so many people, exiting the south through the north. There had to be many, many, many more homes than we know of, and that are still here extant. And you can't use normal historical identification procedures. You cannot do that. Okay, it's because of the secrecy, and you didn't just go to prison if you were caught. You went to prison for a very long time if you were harboring a slave or involved in the Underground Railroad. Okay, and what happened to the slave? I won't even go into that. The violence was despicable. And getting back to these people, these politicians out there that disgust me when they flippantly say things like slavery was good, it was job training. No, it wasn't good. All you have to do is look at the most famous photograph of the Civil War, and it's called Whipping Peter. And it's the back of a slave, the slave's back with like scores of welts from his whip marks, from how he was treated, okay? They were property. And I have to tell you, I'm not going to go into details with Thomas Jefferson, other than to say, I have to reevaluate my opinion of him in light of the DNA testing that showed that so many descendants of Jefferson are African Americans, and which meant that Sally Hemings, who was property and couldn't say no, and was underage too, that's two things, was, his target. In any way, and she had nothing to say. She couldn't say anything. She was quote unquote property. Okay, and in any case, so that spurred me on to write this book. And my chairman, who got me appointed as a judge by Governor Pataki, and I served under other governors too, Governor Spitzer and Governor Patterson. Okay, and that's pretty good to have that on your record, that you served under 3 consecutive governors. In any event, the decision I made when I put on the robes was, do I want to do the conservative track and move up the judicial ladder, to use a corporate phrase, or do I want to do the right thing? I thought about it, and between my own beliefs and that, what my chairman would want me to do, who appointed me a judge, this Arthur Bromwell, I would do the right thing instead, and I did throughout my career. Okay, and I won't go into details on that. I may speak about some of it in the book, but just trust me, I did the right thing throughout my career. And in any event, that's what the book's about. And again, I lay out a kind of legal argument, not a narrative of why this house should be considered, and that you can't use normal historical evidence identification. It's got to be prima facie, to use a legal term, evidence. Yes, there are some Quakers in the title, in the neighborhood. We had meeting houses. They were very active in this county. There are 3 meeting houses that I know of. Poughkeepsie was a hotbed, a few other places. East of here, Fishkill, there was activity with Quakers, and there's several Quaker burial grounds. One in Fishkill, which the town historian Arnold Restivo is working on, trying to get it, spruced up. And I just drove by it the other day, yesterday, in fact, and today. And boy, it's looking really good. He's gotten rid of a lot of the overgrowth, and you can see them. He's uprighted a lot of the headstones. It's pretty incredible from what I looked at in the summer of this year. And East Fishkill Historic Society maintains one of the best African burial grounds in the Hudson Valley, probably. In that part of the county, and it's worth a visit too. It's very, very spruced up, flowers, flags, everything, historic markers. And there's one in Beacon that I visited. There's a lot of churches, and there's one in Fishkill here that's long gone, but is marked by an historical marker at the front of a driveway of the owner of the house, and it designates that this was the site of a African-American church. And the African-American churches are evidence of activity. And again, Beacon has a few churches that are still standing, actually, that go back to that time. And at that time, Beacon was part of Fishkill. So there's a lot of connections there. There's a lot of churches. There's a whole Underground Railroad trail running through Poughkeepsie that you can drive along. I would drive along it rather than walk. Some of the buildings are far apart, but beautiful churches are the mainstay of that tour. But anyhow, that's why I did the book, because you can't, why are we hesitating? If there's any hint that the home is Underground Railroad, then designate it as such. There is no way tens of thousands of slaves came out of the South to freedom in Canada with a handful of stations identified today, over 100 years later. There had to be a lot more, and this house was one of them. If there's any hint of evidence, then designate it as such. And there is no authority saying, you are, you aren't, you are. It's just consensus, okay? So I said, I don't need consensus. In my mind, and in my late wife's mind, this house served as an Underground Railroad station. And what do we have to gain from that? What do you think? You get a delivery, a truckload of gold or something for being an Underground Railroad station homeowner? No, you don't. It's just part of our history that has to be recognized. And again, what really made me mad is this flippant attitude towards slavery, and especially when they said, "Oh, they learned a trade like blacksmithing." Okay, why are you picking that particular trade? And emphasizing the word blacksmithing, okay, black, okay, what's going on there? I mean, there's something wrong there. And seeing these presidential candidates that look good on the Republican side and then flounder when asked simple questions about the Civil War and slavery is absurd. And again, even Lincoln has a connection to this area in that the depot in Peekskill was a stop for him as he secretly made his way to his inauguration with his bodyguard Pinkerton, and it had to be secret because he had death threats. They wanted him dead. They didn't want him to even get to Washington. But he stopped in Peekskill and made his speech. Also, a funny story about it is he got a letter from a young woman in Western New York, a child, saying you should grow a beard. And I don't know. People criticized his appearance. I thought he looked pretty cool looking, and. Even with or without the beard, he had a very characteristic facial appearance. I thought I kind of liked it, and again, he evolved over time about slavery, and his guiding light was Frederick Douglass. Okay, and at one point he was sitting there with nearly before he was assassinated with the vice president that he had chosen, Andrew Johnson, who was a Democrat, and at that time the Democrats were pro-slavery. And he said to Johnson, he goes, "Oh, look, there's Frederick Douglass." And it was obvious that the vice president, Andrew Johnson, had a look of disgust on his face when he looked at Frederick Douglass. So, believe me, Lincoln recognized that, and he must have taken some action before he was assassinated about that. But anyhow, that's it. And again, it's the museum in Peekskill's worth a visit. It's the Depot Museum, the Lincoln Depot Museum, and it's right by the train station there. And again, so that's what spurred me on, and I presented my proof. And again, it's been 10 years of doing this on and off. At times, I'm trying to decipher what it is I wrote 10 years ago. Is that a misspelling? What does that mean? What am I saying here? And a lot of typos were in it, and that was a big job cleaning up. What got me to finally put the book out there in the past few weeks, after 10 years of on and off research and note-taking, I got a message from the East Fishkill Historic Society, and I have good relations with the Fishkill Historic Society as well. But they said, we're putting you on our weekly honor list for your help with on behalf of the East Fishkill Historic Society. And that's because I post a lot of their postings on my historic Facebook page that I maintain, and they post a lot of stuff, and I repost it and get them a lot of exposure. But they decided that they gave me a certain amount of points, and I qualified. So anyhow, I said that's the universe talking to my late wife. I said it to her, in my visions and stuff. But and I said that's it. That's the universe saying go with the book, and it's published. It went to press last night. And the hardcover edition and the Kindle are live on Amazon now. And you can purchase them. And the Kindle version is free starting today or tomorrow through Wednesday. Free, the Kindle version. And after that, it's either $2.99 or $3.99. It's very inexpensive. And the hardcover is out. That's a little more expensive because of the nature of the hardcover format. And the paperback is just it's published, but it isn't. It hasn't permeated into the retail system yet. It's working its way through the algorithm maze, you might say. In any case, that's the story with the book. The title of the book is More Likely Than Not, A Fishkill Underground Railroad Station. And then I state my address, 12 Robinson Street. And in any event, that's the book. I hope you read it. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you learn something from it. And in any case, Happy New Year, and let's have a nice 2024, everyone.